Hello ladies and gentlemen, Matt the Editor here, and welcome to the commentary on Doctor Who Figure Adventures Series 2 Finale, The Time Lord's Bane Part 2. Yes, mostly pretty much as I said, mentioned in my last commentary that I was actually intending to make this a singular episode, but due to production problems, due to time management issues, as well as some technical issues on my Apple Mac, the production was actually starting to get so slow, and by the time it was getting close to the release date, I didn't have enough time to film and edit the entire episode. Plus the fact that there was many script changes in both episodes that was happening. I had no choice but to split it into two parts. And the same can be said for part 2 as well, because when I first released it on the Who Editor channel, I mean, like I said, I was actually intending it to be like a one video, just keep much like just keep it a singular video. But again, because of time issues and production problems and mostly a lot of cut and editing, I had no time but to release only the first half of part 2 on the channel. But I guess in a way, I guess it does kind of build the the tension between both stories. But anyway, that being said, let's talk about this episode. Let's talk about part 2 now. As I mentioned earlier, again, as I mentioned in my previous commentary, there were so many multiple outcomes and scene alterations, particularly in part 2. Whilst with part 1 was pretty much sort of trying to work out how to build up the entire story to where where it might lead the Doctor, including scenes switching around. This one kind of felt more like, how exactly did I want to end this episode? Which I did know how I wanted to end this episode, but how did I want to get to that specific point? How did I want the entire episode to play out to make that ending happen? But again, as I mentioned in my other commentaries, the Guardian was supposed to be one of the recurring villains, particularly in this episode alongside Missy. Like, this scene here was supposed to have been the scene between the Doctor and the Guardian, and the series it was pretty much them talking, which would then lead to the Doctor talking to Romana, which we then got in part 1. Pretty much before, pretty much just to sort of reconcile before they get escaped. The scene was supposed to have been the scene was supposed to be the scene which we actually got in part 1, but once looking over the overall story arc, I did think we didn't have enough scenes with the Doctor and Romana together in order to make the ending we get have more impact, or that it wasn't built up well. So I decided to have that scene moved to part 1. Now I should say at this point, they say they needed a Time Lord's regeneration energy to release Gallifrey. That was something else. That was something that got me I got myself in the corner, because Missy and Romana are also Time Lords, so any of them could have done it. But then I sort of thought, well, the Doctors were pretty much the ones who activated that little orb thing in Day of the Doctor, so they're the ones who controlled the painting or the time lock. So they knew that they had to get one of the Doctors to do it, and as you can see, this was the Doctor they managed to get. Anyway, then there was this idea that Godfrey was originally working for Osiris. He was working for the Guardian and Missy. As I mentioned in my previous commentary, was to get Freya back, and he was to have overheard the Doctor and Romana's conversation, and then decide to go and help the Doctor and Romana escape. And that was when the Daleks were supposed to have made their first appearance, even though the Guardian had no idea of what was going on. It turns out Missy was the one who called the Doctor, because the original idea was that Missy was supposed to be hiding in shadows, and at that point Missy would have revealed herself to the Doctor, and the Doctor would have realized, oh, he is being played, and it also revealed that she's been controlling them the whole time. Now I should say at this point, when it comes to like the Dalek parliaments, the idea of having the Daleks pretty much have the Doctor under trial was an idea I had in my mind for the series finale in the early stages of the pre-production of Series 2. As I mentioned when I did a commentary for Episode 1, there was like so many stories I wanted to include. This was one of the stories I wanted to do. And the story was originally going to be entitled Punishment of the Doctor, or Trial of the Doctor. And at one point it was once called Trial and Punishment of the Doctor. And part 1 was supposed to have been called The Trial of the Doctor, and then this one would have been called Punishment of the Doctor. You can see there was like a lot of confusing titles issues. But then I had the title, The Time Lord's Bane, which was actually supposed to have been the title of the episode for Series 3 at the time, but I thought the title actually sounded a lot better since the Doctor's Bane, the sort of course of his defeat, is pretty much his naivety towards his companions and his friends. So I thought that title actually worked a lot better. And one of the ideas was to involve the Doctor wanting to get to know at least one of the servants of the Daleks and promise to set her free, but once that servant is killed, the Doctor is left out as an outcast and therefore taken under trial and punishment. The idea of having the Daleks pretty much happened after I produced the Mission Dalek Figure Adventure short, that I wanted to use the smaller Daleks, which in my opinion looks so much better in detail, with a much better structure than the actual 5-inch figures. As well as I wanted to include the Dalek floating platform, but the original idea was to have Connie return alive and well, and that would have made the events in the episode. But then I realised that would have made everything, the events of episode 1 irrelevant, or the entire build-up of the Doctor's journey in Series 2 completely pointless. I wanted to include the Doctor's journey in Series 2 so I wanted to include Daleks such as Dalek Sec as the Supreme, Rusty the Dalek as the Dalek Artificial, the Time Controller from UDWF-1, and the Dalek Mutant as the Dalek President or Prime Minister, similar to the ones from Asylum of the Daleks. But once I sent this idea to Sam Lloyd, he actually volunteered to create a custom Dalek for the Dalek Artificial, and it's actually kind of cool what he did. And it's actually kind of cool to have it in this episode that I want to use it more in future episodes. With the escape scene, the Doctor was originally going to have a standoff between shooting Missy and Romana, similar to The End of Time, which was to play a part in Missy's plan to turn the Doctor to the dark side, so to speak. But once the Doctor cannot do it, Missy then kills Romana herself. This would have caused the Doctor to regret what he has done and escape the station with Godfrey, who at the time, who was originally supposed to have been there. And that escape scene in the TARDIS was originally filmed with Godfrey in the TARDIS, but since I changed the scenes around, I removed Godfrey from the first half of this story, I had to make sure that the scenes only included the Doctor in the TARDIS during post-production. Now, again, as I mentioned earlier, there was like, there was like a lot of story changes, mostly around the villains, mostly because when Missy reveals herself, it was originally also would have revealed that Missy had to do with Connie dying in episode 1, and the Doctor would have pretty much shown his anger towards everything that Missy has done. But the problem with that story idea was that it would have little to no sense in the overall series arc. And also afterwards we would have gone in circles, because after the scene we've had with the Doctor and Romana in the room, Godfrey get them out, they try to escape, and then the Daleks come back. We would have had another scene with the Doctor talking in the prison cell, and then talking with the villains, and then escape once again. So as you can tell, there was like a lot of repetitive scenes, and pretty much like everyone was going in circles. Now, since we've reached that point, with the scene in the barn, it was supposed to have had the Doctor and Godfrey land upon what was originally supposed to have been the same barn from Gallifrey, the Doctor's barn from Day of the Doctor, Listen and Hellbent. And since Gallifrey was going to return and Atrios was in existence at the time, I did think the TARDIS would be able to find the Doctor's sanctuary. However, as you might have guessed by that, it would also make no sense since Gallifrey is still trapped in the time lock at this point. So how would the Bane be able to exist outside Gallifrey? So I did think it would make a lot more sense if Godfrey has managed to find a house away from civilization to stay away from the Doctor, pretty much to go in hiding, which actually worked in his favour. And as we can see, it's another Doctor's speech. This time he's sort of questioning his own morals, his own existence. Like, has everything he has done, will it be remembered? Will he be remembered? Because that was pretty much a point where, because when I was writing the script, I was at a sort of dilemma where I wasn't quite sure exactly if I wanted to continue doing Figure Adventures at that point. Because at that time, I was already focused on university work, and I was really trying to find a job at the time. And I was also sort of thinking of doing a 5 years video where it sort of focuses on my dilemma between doing Figure Adventures and leaving YouTube to have a proper career. So I can't, but since that idea did not work, I did kind of think it would actually work okay. It might be a good idea to do for this sort of speech. And as you can see here, it was filmed entirely in the dark. It was actually the first time I started using lights with the sort of candle or fire effect. It was after Sam Lloyd released Descent of the Doctor that I did want to use the same lights for this particular scene. Even though it was kind of hard to see through the camera since we had the entire room dark, lights out and the curtains closed, and there were so many shots in the camera that you could not see the Doctor's face, and also, you know, like slightly out of focus at some points, and it was hard to keep the camera still at some moments. But even though I think the speech did take a little too long, in my opinion, I am actually impressed with how we managed to film this entire scene. The fire lighting, I think, really works in his favor. I'm actually glad that Sam allowed me to use the same barn wars, the table which he also used in his own adventures. Actually, that's the thing, because this particular scene was actually filmed before the other scenes where we saw Godfrey in his own barn in part 1. That was mostly because by the time after I did that scene, I wasn't quite... Sam had gone off to university in Bournemouth, which, by the way, well done, my friend. I wasn't quite sure exactly I would be able to use him for the same stuff. So I asked him if I could borrow the barn walls, and I thought at the time I've got my own table to use, even though it's clearly obvious that it's not the same table or anything like that. Oh yeah. If there's one thing I would definitely change at this point, I would have changed that sort of laser effect, because by the time I released the first half of the video and I released that scene, people thought, oh my god, is Ramona dead? Not dead at that point, but I'm looking at it thinking to myself, I should have made it blue. Make it look like she's been stabilized or frozen rather than look like she's been killed. That sounds a bit harsh, but yeah. But yeah, that's the one. I would have definitely changed it from red to blue at that point. I should say at this point, I mean, I'm looking at the scene now. The idea of Doctor looking at the time ring, which in my opinion I thought it's actually nice. Oh yeah, I just noticed I forgot to add in the actual figure. Yeah, I kind of wanted to answer the question: did Connie and Keith get back together after episode 1? Because as the Doctor mentioned, she will wake up in a couple of weeks, and when she does, you can do it again. I wanted to answer that question: did they have a good life? And yeah, they did. Now this particular scene, similar to in episode 1, as I mentioned, there was supposed to be like a sort of dream visual of the Doctor dying, shown to Connie. The idea for this was that Missy was telepathically talking to the Doctor, and the original idea was that he was supposed to be on a burned planet. Kind of wanted to see this sort of image of Missy in the Rassilon robes. That would be a nice visual, wouldn't it? Michelle Gomez in Time Lord robes. And then she's pretty much just saying pretty much giving exposition that her plan is to, in order to bring the planet back, you have to get rid of a planet. And the idea was that Gallifrey was to take Earth's place at this point. And then we would have seen like the Doctor sort of drowning in the ground, and then Missy would have said, "Okay, I'm sending
I'm not a hero.
my patrols to stand
not
down
even a
until you
good
bring yourself
doctor.
back." Now, at this point, the
All I do
original
is run
script
around
was that
and
Romana
trouble
was
folks.
killed,
What kind of
and the
doctor
Doctor's
does
plan
that?
was to
How
go hiding, and it was supposed to be that
many
Missy and the
casualties will
Daleks were
take?
going to send out some
How many
patrols to find the
Romanas or
Doctor's
Connies
friends to
or
hold
even
hostage
Godfreys
and,
will
or
it
kill
take?
them unless he hands himself over. And the reason this scene had to be adjusted was that one of the things I kind of noticed was that the majority of this episode felt a lot similar to Series 9 Hellbent, which was not a lot of people, which was one that not a lot of people liked at the time, myself included. The only differences would have been that we would have seen would have been the endings, how this one ends in a fight whilst Hellbent ended with a memory wipe. But wait, what about the Time Lord? Shouldn't they have been looking for the Doctor at the point? Sorry, sorry, I'm getting myself sidetracked.
My lord.
Now the idea, I should say at this point, for this scene, the idea was that Missy was supposed to stand next to the Guardian, and the idea was that they were going to be talking to the Emperor of the Dalek, or the Dalek President, and I had this sort of funny visual to have like a Dalek mutant connected, kind of similar to the Emperor Daleks. However, obviously the Dalek Emperor is so big, but they actually go inside the casing, and they come face to face with the actual mutant, which was not supposed to be in like a little tank. It was supposed to have been connected to like wires, similar to basically he was going to be similar to the design of Krang in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles film Out of the Shadows. I don't know why I kind of looked at that film and I thought that's kind of like the Dalek mutants with I thought that would be a nice idea. But yeah, when it came to like the actual production work, I had no idea how I wanted to play it out. Even though I had like a blue tack plasticine Dalek mutant made, I had no idea how I was going to make the Emperor Dalek. Even though I went to the Doctor Who experience and I took multiple angle shots of the Dalek Emperor, the experience, I still had no idea how it was going to be filmed. So I had to take that idea out. Now, funny enough for this scene, I mean, if there's one thing I sort of wish I should have done at this point, is that I should have turned the volume up for my Doctor, because there's like a couple of moments where you can't hear what my Doctor is saying. But I think in this scene in particular, there's no need, because basically the Doctor's pretty much just taking like one last moment look around his TARDIS before he says goodbye, because he knows he's not going to come out of it alive, and he has no idea if he will survive. So he's just saying his final words to like an old friend, especially to the TARDIS. And I quite like the idea that he switches off, the lights go out at that point. Okay, now at this point, as we can see here, Godfrey is talking to Romana. The original idea was to have Romana actually appear as a vision or ghost affected by the time ring for when Godfrey puts it on. Romana was actually supposed to have died earlier in this episode and was to appear as a sort of ghost thanks to Godfrey, and she was to be a sort of guiding angel, or pretty much a guiding angel for Godfrey for when he finds the TARDIS. Actually, it was supposed to have been a classic TARDIS similar to the one from Name of the Doctor and Hellbent, and it was actually supposed to have been hidden behind the barn, almost like it has been in that barn for years, just in case an emergency happens. Kind of like an emergency transport. And Romana was an incoming call. She kind of teaches Godfrey to sort of fly the TARDIS as well as help him through the time station. Through the time station, almost like a video game guide. You're playing like one of those sort of first-person shooter games, and you've got like a voice in your head saying, "Turn left, go right, duck." You're getting close, that sort of stuff. But since Romana's TARDIS was actually was pretty much included, because including the TARDIS was pretty much like a last-minute addition when I edited Day of the Cybermen. And I really didn't think it was actually used that much after Missy sort of destroyed it. I thought it would be much better to have Romana fly in her own TARDIS, even though it's damaged from what Missy did to it, to bring Godfrey back to Osiris to fight the Daleks and save the Doctor. I love the show, by the way. This was pretty much when I was starting to improve on my TARDIS materialization, and it's just seeing the TARDIS materialize with Daleks surrounded it. It's so good. I think the effects on the TARDIS materializing is getting much better. Oh, I should say there was originally a scene which I did film between the Doctor leaving his TARDIS to being taken to the Parliament of the Daleks. Oh yeah, that's the the Dalek mutant president / emperor appearing in hologram. But yeah. But anyway, there was supposed to be a scene whilst the Doctor was being taken by the Daleks to the trial room, where he walks past Romana, who is still alive and well, just pretty much waking up after Missy sort of frozen her in that earlier scene. The Doctor would then ask the Daleks to let her go, because she's done nothing wrong, she's done, and for which they do let Romana go, which then leads to Romana to run to her TARDIS, escape Osiris, and go and find Godfrey. And I don't know why I removed him. Maybe I should have included him. Maybe it was because of time, the duration problems of the story. Maybe it wasn't flowing that well, or something. I don't know. I might release a separate video for deleted scenes. Now, the Doctor's regeneration being extracted, that was actually an element which was going to be featured in the Series 1 finale, Bridge to Eternity. It was an early idea to have the Doctor's regeneration be extracted, leaving nothing but his own clothes. Kind of similar to like when Time Lords get regenerated for the last time, they're nothing but dust. And it was to have the Doctor, and it would have been up to the companions to sort out the problem and save the Doctor, which we do get here. And with Godfrey kind of reaching his sort of goal to become a knight or a soldier, a leader, I think that idea worked a lot better.
Phase 1, go.
And then, as we saw there, they're being attacked by unit ships, Judoon ships, and then later on, those are good shots of Daleks, by the way. I love film animating the Daleks. Don't know why. Anyway, basically, it's basically unit, the Shadow Proclamation, and we find out later Godfrey called upon knights from his own time to come and help the Doctor.
Let's move.
And much like a lot of action, I really, for some reason, I really enjoy film animating people in sword fights or fighting, particularly in Series 2. That's why there's a lot of sword fights in this series. I just realised.
Shields are now stabilized. Alright, then let's move to phase 2.
Now I should say the battle was actually a lot longer in the original cut. We would have seen like a knight at this point, this scene here, we would have seen like a knight teleport in front of Godfrey and Romana to destroy a Dalek. We would have seen a Legolas figure teleport to blind a Dalek, only to then get exterminated straight afterwards. Which I should say the extermination effects had really improved much better in this episode than they did in like Series 1. The reason this scene had to be cut down was both due to the running time being approximately 5 to 10 minutes longer than the actual running time, and as well as there was like a lot of time running out. I was running out of time to release it, and I did think this scene felt like padding rather than continuing the story. It felt like there was like a whole bunch of action scenes rather than actually continuing the story of Godfrey finding the Doctor. Now I should say there were a couple of lines in this scene between the Doctor and Missy for when Godfrey rescues him, when the Doctor kind of brings Missy down. Like at this point he was supposed
You can't do this.
when she says
if you do this, we'll lose Gallifrey.
yeah, when we lose Gallifrey. Does he say in this line?
No. This game is over.
Oh, well, maybe he did. He was basically supposed to say Gallifrey had his chance, and the Doctor would have left Missy to the Shadow Pocket. As he says earlier, he was originally going to say, "I think I'll let the Shadow Proclamation take care of you," and he pretty much just left Missy to sort of die, which was kind of something Moffat kind of got wrong with Missy or the Master in Dark Water until he fixed it in World Enough in Time. That was supposed to have been that moment, and first she would have gone from working with the Daleks to working with the Cybermen. However, she did actually make the continuity between this era and the official show to be a little confusing, especially for when I kind of hinted that Missy's plan with the Daleks, and thus with the Emperor Dalek build, sort of giving us hints of what's going to happen next. From basically the plan where she says, "Oh, I've got a nice idea from The Witch's Familiar," and how it would have worked. And I didn't know how I was going to continue from there to Missy's first appearance in Dark Water. But I do think that maybe this is what happens in between Witch's Familiar and Extremis. So I think the idea of Doctor leaving Missy to the Shadow Proclamation would then lead her to being sent to whoever those guys were in Extremis. Much like with the entirety of this two-parter, one of the alternative ideas was to have the Doctor kind of shoot Missy down after Romana was then killed in the battle, and the Doctor was to use his regeneration energy to bring her back to life. And this would have also have led Romana to appear in UDWF1's Descent of the Doctor, which was the original idea for the original ending. And there was supposed to have been a post-credit scene was to have Romana wake up in Gallifrey to find she's in the UDWF1's universe, and she was to go and find the female Doctor. I didn't think it works, and I didn't really think it worked in the tone of the series, and I think having Romana die, saving the Doctor, would have left a much bigger impact for both the story, the audiences, the characters, and especially for the Doctor. It kind of felt like it was bound to happen, for me anyway.
Doctor, what are you doing?
Now, I should say at this point. Now, I should say at this point. I mean, we're gonna find out later on. He's then being attacked by the regeneration again, or which leads into there. I did film, and the original idea was to have, at this point, he was supposed to have been exterminated by a Dalek, and I did actually film the extermination. I even did the effects and everything. It looked really well, but I then sort of thought, well, since we've had Time Lords being exterminated and die permanently, they don't wake up or regenerate anything like that, I thought I don't think it would work again for the Doctor, so I then decided to have him being attacked by the burning inside his regeneration cycle, which would then lead to Romana pretty much sort of sacrificing her life to save the Doctor.
Now.
So sorry.
Yeah, there we go. Sorry for everything. If there's one thing which I think I actually did pretty well. Oh, for those of you wondering what she's pointing at, there's a machine at the back which pretty much sort of powers the entire security system, the entire engines, and thus she's blown up, and yeah, she's gone, dead, no regeneration, gone. And before the Doctor could even escape to his own TARDIS, he's finally going to regenerate. This particular scene was always bound to happen. If there's one thing I'm actually glad to have improved on, it's the regeneration and lighting effects. I mean, look at that. That is so cool. So proud of that. And yeah, I am so chuffed with how people reacted to that entire scene. And, people were like, oh, I'm so glad to have been following this Doctor. I hope he comes back. Or I hope the new Doctor comes. So yeah, I'm so glad you guys actually, which I should say thank you guys so much for your comments of your reactions to the all my figure adventures. Now, much like with Connie's departure in episode 1, I did originally want to have Godfrey appear as a regular recurring character in series 3. But at the time, I wasn't quite sure if Series 3 would happen to have decided. So, So I then decided to kind of have his story finish with him becoming a soldier / knight of sorts, as well as starting a normal family life. And basically here, at this point, he's just looking at the, all the his times he's marked, the days he's been waiting for the doctor. So he decides to basically move on, and in doing so, he's left the barn, he's gone to a new place, and he's basically started a new life. So this epilogue actually happened with the music first, which is the 4 knocks from End of Time, and then I just improvised with how the story would play out from there. Now I should say, I mean, if you weren't looking at this shot close, this would have been a beautiful picture. I just sort of wish I did a lot better. Looking back, I do find it kind of weird to have Godfrey have a new girlfriend and wife after his previous girlfriend had died in pretty much the same story. But I did like the idea of Godfrey learning to move forward and to have a good life after his experiences with the Doctor. Oh god, look at that. That's a terrible Photoshop image of the hair. There was actually a point where I was sort of thinking maybe have Godfrey turn gay. I'm not sure if it would have worked from his entire story arc or character development in the entire series, but at one point, once I found out that the voice actor Ethan Burke was actually gay himself, I thought it would have been nice to have Godfrey turn gay. But I'm open to suggestions. I mean, what do you guys think? Do you think Godfrey being gay would have worked or not in the story? I mean, leave in the comment. I actually really want to know. Do you think Godfrey would have turning gay would have helped, or do you think it would have been better if he just stayed heterosexual? Basically, he's there. He's gone back to the place because basically he's had his last couple of days. He's gone old. He's lived his life, so he's decided to remain the rest of his life back to the barn. And in doing so, when he gets back, he hears the TARDIS. He walks out, and I actually wanted to get like a big close-up of the TARDIS rather than showing the actual Doctor. Just have the TARDIS sort of close, and the idea was it was going to cut to the TARDIS, almost like, oh man, I kind of wanted to raise the audience's expectations to that maybe the Doctor's alive, maybe it's a new Doctor, and then all of a sudden cut. But the idea of not actually showing the Doctor was just to keep it open to maybe it's the same Doctor, maybe it's a new Doctor, but you had to wait until New Year to find out. So there you go, guys. That is my commentary on the Series 2 finale. I hope you guys enjoyed the amount of talk I went into doing the changes and the script writing and the production work on this entire episode. Be sure to join me next time for the last of the Figure Adventure commentaries for my recent Doctor Who Figure Adventures, the New Year special, Great Spirit of Adventure. So I'll see you then. Take care.